our Grand Lodge, only the Masons are allowed to use the balandrão. Apprentices and fellow craft can't.
What do they wear?
The usual suits.
They have to wear a suit.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So, Brother Rubens, do you have separate degree nights? Like, if your lodge is going to work in a degree, do you work on the stateds? I mean, how does that work? Do you have a stated meeting every month, and do you have degree nights if you're going to be conferring degrees? How does that work?
No, we have ordinary meetings that more like you have maybe some presentations of some, we say, architectural pieces. It's some papers you may present to the lodge. You have some administrative works done, and we have some conferral special meetings. So for these conferral meetings, we say magna. It's like the special meetings that you need to use your suit for this one. But usually they are all kind of ordinary meetings. So I would say that we have, like, for the conferral degrees meetings, like maybe 3 to 5 a year, I guess. Depends. Usually one for enter apprentice, one for the fellow craft, one for the master, and maybe one more for an initiation or.
During the year, so you'd only, if you're going to be an EA, you don't, or you're just saying, like, if you had multiple EA candidates, you'd only confer them one night, or you do them just as needed, is what you're saying.
Oh, you may have some more than one admission, one initiation a year. Like 2, no more than this usually. There are some lodges that are growing, and you may have, actually I attended a lodge that used to have 3 a year. So it's bigger than we would expect, but usually one for each degree. It's usual. Because at least in the Grand Lodge, we have the worshipful master has a 1-year term, but for some, when I tended to, I don't know Grande Oriente of São Paulo, but in the Grande Oriente of Rio de Janeiro is a 2-year term. So you may have like less usually, depends on the worshipful master.
Okay, very good.
So can I comment on that, please?
Please.
Okay, so what needs to be said is that Freemasonry in Brazil is very different from Freemasonry in the US, and one of the greatest differences, I think, is how often we meet, okay? So most lodges in Brazil will meet weekly, okay? So we have some lodges that meet every 2 weeks, and some lodges, it's extremely rare. It's actually the case of my lodge, but it's extremely rare that they meet only once a month. Okay. So because we have so many meetings, we usually, when we are making the calendar, we can include some dates for, for degrees, but it's quite common that we do them as as needed, so that's what happens with most lodges.
So when you say you meet, Luis, so if you have a petition to read or official business, you can conduct that any meeting during the month, or there's only like one? Okay, because here we have stated meetings. So like Ocean View meets the 2nd Friday of every month, so we can only ballot on petitions or conduct any actual business at our stated meeting. But every other Friday is open for degree night. So if we're busy, every other Friday in the month is going to be taken up with the degree. But we never actually confer degrees at our stateds anymore. Some lodges have in the past, but typically if you're having a stated meeting, you conduct business and you'll have a presentation, hopefully some education, but you would never do degree work. But you could have a candidate come and do like his Master Mason's proficiency. But you typically wouldn't initiate a candidate at your stated meetings because it would go on terribly long.
Yeah, most, it's possible that it all boils down to the lodge, so if the lodge wants to schedule, that every say every first Friday of the month is, you know, it's for master masons to, you know, conduct the administrative affairs of the lodge. It's okay, you know, but what happens with most lodges is that they are not that formal with their calendars because
Right.
it's not mandatory. So, you know,
Okay.
people end up being as flexible as
Understood.
possible.
Okay. Brother Rubens, you had some, you raise your hand.
Yeah, actually, I have a question.
Sure.
Because let me ask you about you in USA. Because
Certainly.
I understand that many lodges in USA, after Baltimore Convention in 1843, decided to open meetings in the third degree. Because of that Morgan affair stuff and in the past, blah, blah. But I heard that recently there are many lodges starting working in the enter-apprentice degree. I'm not sure how you do this in Virginia. Usually our meetings are in the enter-apprentice or master mason degrees.
Right. Okay. In Virginia, our stated meetings must be held in the Master Mason's degree, and you have to be a Master Mason to attend. That's where we can vote on petitions and conduct any actual business. We can't vote. You can't do any actual business except on the Master Mason's degree. And I'm not sure when that became the law, but that's the way it's been for some time. I do believe at one time we actually were allowed to meet on a lesser degree for the stateds. But what we typically do is we have a Master Mason's degree. What I would like to see, and we don't see enough of it, is have lodges have another meeting during the month on, say, the EA degree to allow EAs to attend and have just some sort of a presentation, a paper or something. But most lodges don't do that, but they certainly have the option. So typically, we always meet in the Master Mason's degree at our stateds. We can only conduct business on that degree, and fellow crafts and EAs can't attend any business meetings till they're raised. So the only time we'd open a fellow crafter and EA would be to do that degree or to hear someone return their catechism for that degree. Brother Mark?
And if I could just add in on that,
Please.
Rubens, is a great question. I think to some extent, you know, as Brother Christopher mentioned, it's our law that requires that. But there's an interesting point with your lodges meeting so often during the month and the ability to cover work at any point in the month. I think you leave an opportunity to do additional things. My Blue Lodge is up in the northern part of the state, and we're kind of an exception. We have, our bylaws require us to have 2 meetings a month. So we meet twice a month, with the exception of, you know, December, because of Christmas, we don't meet, we only meet once. And in the summer, we'll only meet once in July and August, just because people are on vacation and such. But one of the things that I find in our lodge is that because we meet twice a month, and are doing business, you know, every 2 weeks or so, if, you know, we will open in the Master Mason's degree because the lodge says that, the law says that we must, but there are procedures that allow us to move down into an EA degree, and there are times where we will do that. There were times where we will start our meeting a little bit late and do a lot of presentation
things
up in front of the meeting, right? So that it's completely open, and not only can you have brothers of any degree there, but you could also have candidates, you know, people who are just interested in Freemasonry, so they can see, assuming that the presentation is appropriate for that level, right? I mean, if it can be open, then anybody can be there. So I'd be interested, you know, I mean, there's probably something there that, you know, it's harder to do. Like, I mean, I feel that the reason why most lodges in Virginia have moved away from doing multiple meetings a month is because everybody's busy and it's hard to do multiple meetings in some regards. But in some ways, it also makes your life easier for some of these things that you're talking about, because you have time. You don't have to do all of your work. Like, you know, we may have petitions at Cherrydale Lodge, Cherrydale, Columbia. We may have petitions. We're not required to read them in the first you know, like if it's the first meeting of the month, even if we have to do that work in the month, we don't have to do it in the first meeting of the month. Like we could do it in the second meeting of the month. And so the master and our secretary work very hard to kind of, you know, schedule all of the work of the month and divide it up. Like, oh, this meeting's going to be long. Can we do some of this other stuff here? You know, yes, we can. And that way you allow, I think, for some of the things which perhaps you guys have an easier time at because you have more opportunities. You know, even if you were required to open up as a master mason, you might be able to go to a lower degree for something else and involve more people. So just a thought, it was interesting. I guess I didn't, you know, hearing that you guys meet so much more often and having been a master of a lodge that had to meet at a minimum 21 times a year, you know, and then on top of that degree work, which is always, as Chris said, it's always a separate meeting for that kind of stuff. But there's, I think, a lot of value to being able to have that kind of contact and having enough time to say, I'm not doing this now, I'm doing this now, and go from there.
Brother Rubens, just to clarify, when you have your meetings every week, then what degrees do you open on, or is it just whatever?
Yes,
need be?
that's what I asked for the word. Just because usually in Brazil we work in an apprentice degree. Usually,
Okay.
I would say let's say 85 and 90% of our meetings are in the apprentice degree. But for the we usually open for Master Mason just for financial issues,
Right.
election, and for conferral degrees of Master Mason, and eventually some, usually, you know, it's kind of seldom, we have some instructions for Master Mason. I would say that an average would be 5 meetings a year for Master Mason in the lodge usually, and all of them are enterprise. But why I asked you? Because I am the Grand Secretary for Foreign Relations in the Grand Lodge of Rio, and many brothers ask to travel US and ask for the good standing letter and the good standing certificate. And usually when they are enter apprentice or fellow craft, I usually warn them that lodges in US open just for Master Mason, and they may not be to find a lodge working in the enter apprentice degree, because it's uncommon. In Brazil, you are a Mason when you are enter apprentice. And as you take, Felipe Coelho told us, we usually take a year to go to the fellow craft, and at least 6 more months for the Master Mason. So usually take a year and a half to be like a Mason in US.
Right.
And during this time, you guys traveled like to Florida, New York, or whatever, and they intend to visit the lodge, but usually they're unable to do this because of lodges working in the Master Mason degree.
Right. Well, I want to answer your question, but I got to ask one first. Who can ballot on a petition? Do you have to be a Master Mason to ballot on a petition? Or
for the petition, usually enter apprentice also, because
really? Okay.
Because you understand that we are a kind of civil association, and they are not full members, but they also can vote for. But depends. Okay, please, Felipe.
Well, so let me. Okay, so because we only can vote if you're a Master Mason. So you're saying you can open as an EA. Everyone there can vote, so you can do a petition on the EA degree. It's not a big deal because everybody there can ballot on it. At least.
No, sorry.
Louis is disagreeing. Oh, but I want to answer your question about the visitation. Typically in Virginia, if you're an EA or a fellow craft, you are not allowed to visit other lodges. This is for us. If we have an EA, he's not allowed to visit another lodge on his own. So if we know another lodge is doing an entered apprentice and we want them to see the degree, we will take him with us and make sure Master Masons go with him and attend their meeting for the EA, and that way he can visit. But we have to go there to vouch for him. It's not until you're a Master Mason that you're allowed on your own to go visit anywhere in Virginia or outside. I'm willing to bet if an EA wanted to attend any lodge in Virginia, they wouldn't let him in because we don't let our EAs visit. I'm not positive on that. Mark might be able to tell us that's true or not, but I would think he'd be turned down because he's not a Master Mason, and we want to consider him a full member. But that hasn't come up. Sorry, Louise had a question. So did Felipe. But Louise, go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that it's important to understand some things about Brazilian culture. Okay, so the first thing is you guys have a lot more, let's say, neighborly social activities than we have here in Brazil. You guys have book club, fishing club, and the guys you play pool with. Here in Brazil, it's not that much, you know. So that's why Freemasonry ends up having a very strong social role in the life of a Freemason. So that's probably one of the reasons why we meet a lot, you know. And because we have a lot of meetings, we end up having a lot of instructions, you know, in the catechism for the degrees, you know. But also what you guys have to understand is that the culture here is that Freemasonry is structured around the EA degree, not the master degree. I understand that in the US, for most things Freemasonry related, you have to be a Master Mason. Here in Brazil, most lodges will open on the EA degree, and if necessary, you know, if they want to vote something, they will just, you know, upgrade the meeting to Fellow Craft or for Master Masons. I disagree a bit about the EA being able to vote or petition. That's not exactly what happens. What happens is let's separate between let's make a difference between the official votings and the non-official votings. Okay, so when I say non-official votings, I'm talking about, you know, what are we going to serve as dessert for our next charity dinner, you know? So some lodges will allow EAs to vote for that. You know, I was in a lodge that did everything that way. But for all things official, you have to be a Master Mason too.
I was speaking specifically about balloting on petitions.
Yeah, so that's, you have to be a Master Mason.
Okay, so you'd have to open in the Master Mason's degree to vote on a petition then.
Most lodges will open as EA and then go all up to the third degree and then go and, you know, put the EAs and FCs outside for a while and then go back to EA for the rest of the meeting, okay? That's what most lodges do. Some do have, we do have some, you know, sometimes the Grand Lodge will require that we have a certain number of FC or Master Mason meetings a month. But usually we do more studying and degree work than actually, you know, voting. But that depends on the lodge as well. You know, so for most lodges we open as EA and then just move up, do what we need to do in terms of administration and then go back down to EA. And we've been, lodges here in Brazil have been moving this bureaucratic, let's put it that way, part of Freemasonry outside the lodges. For example, my lodge, we decide everything over lunch because we meet on Saturday mornings. And but for most lodges, it will be dinner or social media, email, you know, and just make it official after, you know, having decided that. It's becoming more and more common here in Brazil to do that. And last thing, as far as visiting other lodges is concerned, there is no official rule that says that an EA or an FC cannot attend a lodge so long as the lodge is meeting on the level that they belong to.
Right.
But there is a practice, you know, you know, the lodges usually don't recommend the EA or the FC to, you know, visit without the supervision of a Master Mason. You know, just so as to avoid some, you know, confusion or maybe problems with them, you know, being able to get in a meeting or something like. But there's no official rule saying that it has to be so. It's more like a best practice kind of thing.
Okay, I had one.
May I comment something about that?
Oh, please, Felipe, go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
No.
In our Grand Lodge, we tend to schedule all the meetings along the month. For example, my lodge have 2 EA meetings, 1 FC and 1 Master Mason meeting during the month. We did that because we have a lot of problems with retention of members. So we would like them to participate more. Did you hear me?
Yes,
Because,
yes.
okay. So usually we do that so the FC can participate more as well, and they can diversify the meetings.
Right. I'd be in favor of us changing things around like that, but typically we don't. I guess if you don't have a lot of EAs and fellowcrafts, and if they're getting raised fairly quickly, I think most lodges don't see the need to accommodate them. If we had dozens of EAs and fellowcrafts working through and it took over a year, there would be more of a demand to accommodate them. But really, if you only have one and you quickly get him raised, you're like, well, he can wait 2 months. I wanted to give you all an anecdote, though, of how it used to be when I joined, which wasn't that long ago, but it has changed, and I'm very grateful for it. Imagine if you had to examine an EA to confer the fellowcraft degree. And this is not at a stated, this is at a called communication. This was the rule in Virginia until like the late 80s, early 90s. You would open on the Master Mason's degree. You would call off and open an entered apprentice degree. You would bring in the candidate, he would stand his EA catechism, you kick him back out, you close the entered apprentice degree. You then open the fellowcraft degree, confer, pass the candidate to the degree of fellowcraft, kick him out again, well, close the fellowcraft degree, kick him out again, call back on to the Master Mason's degree, and close the lodge and go home. You had to open on the Master Mason's degree, no matter what degree you were working in. And thankfully, someone at some point said, this is silly. If you're going to work only in the EA or the fellowcraft, come in, open the lodge on that degree, close it, and go home. The only thing you had to do was you had to salute the flag at the first meeting you opened. That was it. But imagine having to go through all of those steps multiple times in the night just to do an EA and a fellowcraft. It's thankfully we made it a little more streamlined for us. I got a couple more questions. If anybody wants to end this right at 11, we can, but we're come up on time. But I'm only to keep going. Everybody else is. I planned an hour, but if you want to keep talking, we'll keep going. Rubens, did you have a question? Or I was going to move on to another topic, if that's okay.
Yes,
you have a question.
Just,
Go ahead.
just an observation, because usually, yes, we are pretty sure that you have like a month from the inter-apprentice to the fellowcraft and to the Master Mason. So it's very different the way we work in Brazil, like just like you have in Scottish, right? Because usually you have 1 to 4 day reunions and the conferral from the 4th to the 32nd. Usually in Brazil, to get to the 32nd or 33rd degree usually takes 6 years. So you start in the fourth degree, and then in the end of the year, in 1 year you get the 14th, and then you go the 19th. So it is different. It's different. Yeah, it's just the way we work.
So I was going to ask, Rubens, we'll start with you. Are there lectures for each of the 3 degrees like we have?
Yes, usually lectures in Brazil, we have some needed to follow, like for the inter-apprentice, you have 7 lectures. So you need to pass through them and to present a paper and to pass through some argument about your degree, like the catechism and stuff. And then you are allowed to be passed to the fellowcraft. So usually have like formal lectures for degrees, like 7 for the inter-apprentice.
I'm sorry. What do you consider a lecture? Maybe I'm not saying. To us, you confer the degree, and then the lecturer stands up and gives a lecture explaining more of the symbolism of the degree itself.
Yes, that's it.
Okay,
that's
and you have 7 different lectures.
You have a lecture for the tracing boards, another for the tools, another for the symbolisms of the lodge. Let's say this way.
Is that all in one night?
For the initiation.
Is that all in one night?
No, it's
different. Okay.
You have 7 different meetings. We have
Okay. So they get the actual degree where they get the obligation. we're online, so I'm trying to be vague about certain things, so I'm not, you know, breaking any rules about secrets. So the degree part where the candidate gets brought in, gets obligated and all that, that's the degree part. And you have a lecture after that at the first meeting.
Yes, our first meeting is just about the secrets and the
Okay.
initiation, and all the catechism and how things need to be said and stuff.
Mhm.
And then you have another meeting just about symbolism and the tracing board and Masonic tools. So
So
like,
you have a separate meeting for each of the 7 lectures?
usually.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
You may have two lectures one night, but it's not that common.
So you would come in. So for the second meeting, the candidate would come in, you'd open the EA degree, and then what? You'd go right into the lecture? Or is
You
there
have
anything-
usually we have business, and then we open for the instruction.
Right,
time.
but for the candidate, he doesn't have any initiation part. He's not blindfolded.
No.
Okay.
Just
But
instruction.
just you have the lectures, and then so he has to be there for 7 lectures, and then he's learning his catechism along the way.
Yeah, usually,
Okay.
and you may
Interesting.
have some on other meetings that just for, okay, let's remember how is the enter apprentice march and stuff like this, but
Okay.
reminding and preparing for the, you know, we have like a test for before be approved to be a fellow craft.
So they have to pass the test. Okay. So for the fellowcraft, how many lectures are there?
Excuse me?
For the fellowcraft degree, how many lectures are there?
5 usually. Well,
Wow.
depends on the right. You have a lot of issues on it, but
We only have 1. Well, now, okay, just typically, do you know roughly the length of one lecture? Because like our EA lecture, if the lecture is good, at 20 minutes, maybe half. I don't know if I've ever timed them, but they feel like around what, 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops. That sound right, guys? No more than 20, I don't think. For the lecture
usually
itself.
here is 20 to 40, no more than 40.
For each one, though.
For a lecture. Yeah, but it's not by heart. So
Okay, ours are, well,
reading, discussing.
okay. Because ours
I don't know.
supposed
I
to
don't
be-
know. The guys Felipe and Luis Felipe could correct
Yeah.
me for their Grand Lodge and Grand Oriente. So
Yeah. Please.
maybe different.
Felipe, how's with you all? Your lectures, is that similar in your Grand Lodge?
Yes, it's a bit similar, but we have only 5 lectures for EA
Okay.
and 3 for FC and 3 for Master Mason as well.
Okay. I'd be interested to hear them sometime just to compare with what, if we're doing like a summary, if we're saying the same thing, but it's more condensed, you know, because we get it. I mean, our lectures are roughly, I'll say, I think even 20 minutes is long for what I'm trying to remember, but it just seems like that's a lot of information to pass along.
Are your lectures very direct? For example, you go and say to the EA what they need to learn? Because
Right.
for example, our lectures are like some simulation of a situation or a dialogue between the worshipful master and the senior warden and the junior warden, for example, like a simulation of feature for explaining all the features of the lodge and something about the history as well.